Afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from today. I'm Kyler Cheatham, Global Marketing Director here at Third Stage Consulting Group, and I'm extremely excited today to welcome my good friend and colleague, Parisa Noble, who is our Global Content Strategist, really the brains behind the operation here at Third Stage when it comes to content curation and thought leadership. So welcome to the live stream today, Parisa.
Thank you. I'm excited to be on. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm super excited about this conversation. A lot of times, marketing or content creation can get the perception of a really more creative and not so much technical sphere. But we both know, being in the technology space and in the marketing space, we leverage technology on a daily basis in many different formats. So today, we really wanted to bring to our audience a different perspective on what that looks like in leveraging technologies and emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence in content marketing. But before we get to that, just some logistics and reminders for our awesome audience out there. So we are streaming on YouTube and LinkedIn and Twitter. And we can see all of your comments whenever we do live streams, whether it's myself or Eric or any other of our colleagues. We always want to and encourage you to drop any questions or feedback in the chat, and we can actually answer those questions live within this format. So no matter what platform you're on, we'll be able to see what your engagements are here in this conversation. So to get started, we always like to ask where you're joining us from today. We do have a huge international audience and footprint that brings a lot of great insight to these conversations. So if you could just drop in the chat where you're joining us from today, that would be excellent. We are live today in Denver, Colorado, in the United States, and excited to share this topic with you. So, Parisa, let's jump in. So, can you give us kind of just an overview of the current climate landscape of artificial intelligence in the overall content curation and digital marketing space?
Sure. So it's interesting because I think the past couple years, specifically since 2020, is when it's caught wind and become more and more popular. And it's met with a lot of hesitation, which one can imagine when we start talking about artificial intelligence. Now, with what's out there, we're looking at a lot of copywriting softwares that are emerging in the market. And that being mostly just content writing, right? So it's writing blogs, writing captions, writing descriptions for any content that you're putting out. And that's been one that's been most popular, at least in my world, because I am a content creator, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I write a lot. And that's been something that's been a good tool for me in recent months. But I will say it's much more than that. There's a lot of technologies out there that are helping you analyze your funnels and figure out where you're getting the most engagement. Is it on specific topics, on specific mediums? You know, for example, are you getting more traction on your blogs and articles, or are you getting more traction on video? And kind of deep diving into that so you can expand on what is working. Beyond that, there's tools out there for media buying. I mean, there's honestly a lot out there, but I will say it's growing quickly, right? But it is a newer concept. And I don't know that it's quite there yet. Right now, as I leverage some of these tools for my work today, it's more so servicing as speaking to writing blocks. And, when I reference the copywriting services, it's more so you have to manage it, right? There are some scenarios where it can write freely and write a decent caption, for example, or sales copy. But almost always it's kind of missing the mark as of today. Now, like I've been thinking, it's different today than it was 6 months ago, and it will be very different 6 months from today. And the more that these tools are leveraged and utilized, the smarter they become, which is good. I mean, that's an intimidating thing to say, because I think that's where a lot of the fear comes from. Is this going to be smarter than people one day? But at its core, I don't think that that's possible, especially when it comes to marketing. Because if you think about it, marketing is such an empathetic field, right? It's
Mhm.
not really black or white. It's very full color. It's how can I connect with my audience, and play on the emotions in a sense. Where trusting that to AI is it's just not there quite yet, but it's almost there. So everything on the market today, it's helpful as a tool. And I think in the coming years, we're going to see a huge boom in its functionality and just with what's on the market.
Absolutely. And I think that goes for your overview, goes for all of artificial intelligence, whether you're using it in a marketing field or for manufacturing or for overall automation, unless your business is 100% robots, there is a people component. There's a personalization component. There's a messaging component that just needs to be evaluated by that human aspect. But I do want to talk a little bit about the automated processes. I thought we would kind of split this up and talking about that process, technology, people's kind of triangle that we leverage with all of our client community here. And I found this quote and it made me think of you because I know that you feel this pain, but it said digital marketing can sometimes feel like a career of daily recurring chores, which is a lot of times what that is, just because you do, especially in our space as a top thought leader within the digital transformation industry, we crank out a ton of content on a daily, on a weekly basis. We put out more than 30 pieces of content when it comes to overall blogs, social media, those types of different things. So the automation in those processes, I would assume, Teresa, and leading a content team, that has to really expand upon the efficiencies of not having to manually trigger every email, not having to, go into each system or schedule or those types of things, but letting the data kind of drive that overall process, I assume has to be a huge, huge piece of progress within the content creation field.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the key to the vault with digital marketing, right? Is consistency and frequency. So when you have so much content that you're putting out, it's helpful to have a tool that automates those mundane tasks. And I think it was maybe last week or the week before where we had Teresa Richardson on
Mhm.
this live stream talking about change management when it comes to artificial intelligence. And it's absolutely intimidating, right? And I say that because I was intimidated by the concept of it at first too. If it's a marketing artificial intelligence software, what does that mean for a marketer? Are all of their tasks going to be automated? And as I started embracing it and welcoming the technology, it opened my eyes to a totally different perspective in the sense that it's taking away the busy work, right? It's automating the things that take time, the things that ultimately pull you away from strategy and put you in the weeds. It takes care of the weeds, right? It's like
It's
it's
a weed eater, if
it's
you will.
exactly. Yeah, and it helps you kind of take a step back, whether it be somebody in a content strategist role that's creating content, or even if you're a business owner, for example, and you're looking for ways to market, but you are not a marketer, you're an accountant, or
Mhm.
you make pizzas for your restaurant. So, if marketing isn't your forte and writing isn't your forte, these tools are available to help you create and automate the tasks that just take too much time for you to do, and it that hinder you, I should say, from focusing on your superpowers. So absolutely, with what you're saying on the automation side, there's so many different elements from, for example, I think of a media buying technology.
Mhm.
There is something out there where when a space opens up on a high traffic website that you target
Mhm.
as a brand, the technology can come in and make a bid and get the space automatically without having to go through negotiations time. If someone's there watching it and waiting for it to open up for ad space, that's a waste of time. I mean, there's other things that people could be
Yeah.
doing to grow the business, to kind of take on that more strategic view. So it's interesting to see how people are going to have to advance and excel with the emergence of AI, because all of these mundane, smaller tasks are going to become automated.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's music to my ears as a digital strategist for sure. And building on upon that, going one step above kind of just the overall efficiencies that automation provides as far as opportunities. We also have AI that we know is based on data management. You can't have AI in any sort of function across your business, whether it be marketing, accounting, manufacturing, supply chain without some sort of data management structure. And I think a lot of times marketing is seen as more of an art form, which it is a creative element to each business. And that's why, people like you and I are in those positions. But we also have a full data driven strategy. And I think one thing that AI really brings to the table is having that opportunity to not only have the visibility to marketing data, what content is successful, what is not, what is your audience consuming, what are they not, but also creating a consuming area that you can easily digest these, whether it's a dashboard, those types of analytic processes that give opportunity in that space for additional content development. So, my question for you, Parisa, because I honestly don't know, is in these different platforms, if you have this data, AI inherently takes that data and makes a change or triggers your content process, right? So it finds if one piece of content is really engaging,
Mhm.
it might switch up the order of what you have in there and talk more about that because that's what your audience is consuming. Is that kind of how that works on the data management and processing side?
Yeah, I'd say I think it depends on the focus of the technology. Because if you're looking at, for example, the example I gave before of the funnel analytics, if you're looking at an AI software that takes everything that you're putting out and determines what is getting the highest engagement, I mean, that's ultimately learning through repetition of what works and then spitting out a solution for you to focus on. Whereas if you look at the copywriting AI side, they're more so, it's interesting how that works because they're more text scraping across the entire web. So they'll, if you start writing about AI, for example, or robotics, it's going to scrape the text or pull from all the text that it sees out in the open source, for example, Google, and pull that information in, which I think is actually very ironic because you'll use this tool to help you create content, right? But it's almost like it's regurgitating content that already exists out on the market and it's pulling data from everything that is already out there. So the irony that I think is so fascinating is with this AI, we're advancing so quickly, and yet it'll get to the point where if we become fully reliant on this AI, then the rate at which we're producing original content will decrease. So it's an ironic balancing play that I think is very fascinating. But to answer your question about data, I think ultimately it comes down to the main functionality of the software, and it pulls differently depending on what it's trying to do. But at the end of the day, it's all run off of, I mean, it follows the data, right? Any strong digital marketing strategy will follow the data. So that has to be a key functionality, at least to the more technical elements of marketing, versus like the creative writing side of it.
Absolutely. And building on that, using that predictive analytics feature that data actually produces to look at customer behavior. What will they essentially, what does that forecasting look like? What content are they looking for? Because their integration of, search queries and those types of additional data points can really integrate all in one space for businesses to really understand that full journey of their overall customer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's truly no better tool than understanding and following the data because it will tell you exactly what you should be posting about, how often, et cetera. It builds your strategy for you, if you will. So having the tools to really uncover and dig deeper into the analytics side is only going to help businesses grow who decide to leverage these tools.
Absolutely. The other thing I really find fascinating about AI in content marketing is just the topic generation. I think both you and And I spend a lot of time on actually thinking about like does our audience want to be able to consume? What are they looking for as far as research or supportive content? And AI actually uses that data disposal to generate those content through that content scoring mechanism. And I think that that's just such a huge piece to understanding not only from an internal side of what to write about, what to create, but also from a user experience side. Maybe, in a brand that we really enjoy, and being able to access that content through an organized function that shows you exactly what you want in your algorithm.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, if you look at, I think that's the biggest challenge with a lot of content creators is what do I post about? You
Mhm.
know, what do I talk about? Especially if you're doing it so frequently and you have to do it consistently, sourcing the idea of what to even say and what to share can be difficult doing it over and over again. So having these different algorithms that pull in from, for example, what are people searching on Google?
Mhm.
What's going to help your SEO analytics? Pulling in those elements helps set you apart. I mean, you see how much content is being published on a daily basis across different industries.
Mhm.
And when it comes down to figuring out what you're going to talk about, it's not only making it relevant, but it's also making it uh, timely and formulated in a way that will that will someone's angry back there.
Yeah, no, it's actually the wind. We're not crazy
The
people and
wind
slamming doors in
is
our house,
crazy.
but the wind here in Colorado is just wild the last couple of days. So, little update on our weather. If we could get an AI system to help with that, that would make my life easier. And as probably our audience hears in the background, as a working mom, I'd also like some AI prediction on when my toddler is going to get hungry. So, just
I
a
would
little lens behind the curtain for my life, but
yeah.
sorry for the interruption.
Oh no, I would support those as well. Maybe we should put our heads together and make some
Right,
AI technology for
right.
moms out there, huh? But what was I talking about? I think I was trying to get at to land the plane is
Yeah,
SEO. When you create content, you're trying to rank on the first page of Google. So having these algorithms that kind of tell you what verbiage to use in your headlines, what keywords to use in your blogs, so that your content is relevant and timely and ranks well. That's something that is definitely going to change how digital marketing even operates.
absolutely. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about the personalization factor, because to me, that's a really fascinating part. You kind of touched on the over irony of producing original content with technology, but it actually might do it better than people themselves or optimize that a lot of times. And we know, as being in the marketing industry, a lot of times that segmentation approach, talking to specific audience members or targeting a specific location. We're a global team, so a lot of times we take cultural, language nuances into consideration when we do create content, which Parisa manages and knows well. So understanding all of those audience segments can kind of take a lot of qualitative and quantitative type of approaches. And I'm wondering if you think that AI is actually going to be able to assume that role of personalization, with being obviously a technology, right? A faceless technology, and being able to really provide insight when looking at that segmentation of audiences.
I think it will, and it will come with frequent use of these tools. For example, I mean, because at the core, AI is it's pattern recognition, right?
Mhm.
The more people say for example, in Africa, utilize this tool to write, it's going to get acclimated to the nuances in their language and learn how and what works in that given region. Or if you're looking at different segmentations as far as demographics, etc., I think it will. I think it just comes with repetition again, because the more we use it, the deeper the learning gets and the more data it has to pull from. And I think that's the fear factor of it, is once it gets to that point, what does that mean for the rest of, you know, the world when you're looking at AI as a whole. It's funny, at Easter, we had some family over and we were talking about AI, and somebody said, I don't know that the world's going to even exist when AI is in is in action. And I took a step back and thought it's here and the world
Uh-huh.
isn't
We
ending. So
use
that's
it
great.
frequently. Yep.
But I think just where it is today and where it can go, I think that that is going to be a huge jump, and it just comes with using it, because once the code is there and it's able to gather all that information, it will become better at determining, you know, how to speak, what to say, what is relevant, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times our pop culture can lead us down some misperceptions for a variety of things in life, right? But mostly AI. We look at a popular series like the Avengers, right? The Marvel series. We've seen things like the Age of Ultron, which we have an artificial intelligence actually take over robots throughout the world and completely try and take human life off of the planet because they're too emotional. And I think that's really the issue when we have the conversation of AI. Is a lot of times I think we should rename it because it's been tainted through a lot of these examples that just simply are not the case. But the interesting part of Avengers, as I nerd out on it, and we talk about Avengers a lot on this show, is that the Age of Ultron, the Ultron was the villain, right? And then it actually evolved to become Jarvis, who is Vision, who is on the hero side too. So it evolved to be able to take those data points of social emotional interaction, absorb them, and become quote unquote good. So it's something that I think has a very similar on the content marketing side because it is able to pick up on those key nuances of language and how a person writes and those types of things, um, and be able to kind of take that persona and put it in the written form, and how that works. I, as a communication major in college, I wrote paper after paper after paper after paper. And I keep thinking to like students nowadays, like, oh my gosh, could you imagine just having to like put in, I'm writing about organizational design, and then you have a 7-page paper just like that. So it's not
Yeah.
fair. I tell you, it's not
I
fair.
know they have it easy, don't they? It's funny though, because so I'll give you my experience. It's funny that you bring up Jarvis because that's actually one of the leading copywriting platforms. I think they changed their name to Jasper for trademark purposes, which
Perfect.
makes sense. But at a high level, these copywriting softwares, if you will, are they're definitely working, right? So when you put in a topic, you put in your intro paragraph and you click generate and it writes for you. I don't know that it will ever get to the point where it doesn't need a human to look
Mhm.
at it because at the end of the day, that emotional intelligence factor, I don't know that artificial intelligence will get to that point of emotional intelligence and how, only so many different types of patterns can tell you how someone will react to something completely new, new events. You know, COVID-19, for example, that has, that specific example and those data points have never happened. So if, hopefully that never happens again. But when a event like that happens and it's brand new, nobody has experience with it, the artificial intelligence won't necessarily have experience with how people respond to it, if that makes sense. So having that emotional intelligence to see, wow, what should we talk about when it comes to this touchy subject that now everybody is focused on? There's always going to be a lack of human element when it comes to these technologies, which again, I go back to, if anyone, I think our audience for the most part is welcoming AI because, a lot of people in the tech space realize the value that it could bring to the workplace and
Mhm.
how it can streamline and drive efficiencies and, just make everything a little quicker, easier, faster, stronger, what have you. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of people are hesitant because of that threat of what will my job entail, or what will be a human's role. And I think when it comes to marketing and these specific uh, softwares, you can't create a whole, and I'm curious to hear, I know you said you had some case studies, so I'm curious to see
Oh yeah. Yeah.
writing. If it's not as simple as pushing a button and it just produces content for you, it's very much, you have to edit, redirect it, kind of show it the way, if you will. So just to go back to that Jarvis turning into a good superhero, I think again over time that could change, but as of today it needs that human leadership, if you will,
Yeah.
to produce good content.
Yeah. You can't do what we do,
Yeah.
people. Yeah. But I want to jump into those case studies that you mentioned. But first, I want to show this question or comment from the audience, because I think it's a really well said. It's from Arturo on LinkedIn. And it said, data is the new oil. But just like oil, it must be refined into insights in order to create value. AI helps. So I think that is really well said, in the fact that it is, data is now an asset. People see it as a technical asset, which they should have always, but now we are really in the phase where data management is absolutely essential to any successful business strategy. But it does need to be refined with that human touch. If you are a Bruce Springsteen fan, that's the song that's in my head right now. Bruce is too young for that, but it does need kind of that personalization to say, okay, here it is. AI has helped me surface these. It's helped me find key findings, but that overall human dynamic of saying, okay, great, this data is going to create this strategic approach, is really kind of the human process technology piece involved in that. Would you agree?
Oh, completely. And I love how, Arturo, you laid that out. It's very poetic, honestly.
It is.
It is. It needs to be refined. Data needs to be refined to make any sense. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of data points and numbers. And AI can help tell the story and put them in order in a way that makes sense and turn it into strategy. So again, just going back to AI being a tool to help humans figure out how to operate at an optimal level. It's like our own little personal assistants, just making us better, you know?
Absolutely. It's almost like auto text. No, I'm just kidding. It's not. Oh man. Well, let's jump into some of these case studies, because I'm excited, to talk to you about some of these, because these are some of, the world-renowned brands that are utilizing this software, and us learning about how they're actually integrating it into their marketing tactics and overall strategies. And so the first one I want to talk about is eBay, which is kind of, if you didn't know what eBay was, it's a consumer to consumer online platform that focuses on kind of auction based e-commerce. So they use a tool, and I might say this wrong. I think it's called Farsi, and you would know better than me probably on this side. But basically, it generates thousands of different machine written headlines to send to customer segments depending on their interest. So basically, it utilizes natural language algorithms, search queries, those types of things, in being able to not only combine eBay's brand voice, but also the email headlines and best practices that are top content scorers. So I think that's something that they've seen a lot of success with. And I could see that being scaled to a variety of e-commerce sites if they don't already use that. Amazon, or even small businesses, because that can be the hardest part, is creating that really targeted headline to make sure that you are being shown in those search results, especially if you're like, a fulfilled by Amazon type of business that utilizes them.
Yeah, I'm happy that you say that, because a lot of the copywriting technology that I've been referencing has been long form.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to short form headlines, titles, short descriptions, captions even, it's very helpful, because you put in exactly what your keywords are. What is this post about, for example? And it gives you a handful of different options to choose from. And a lot of those are pulling in from data from across the web of what is popular right now, what is relevant, what do people search for when it comes to this very topic. So I love to hear that eBay has had success with that. That's a good one.
Yeah, and I think you're really going to like this one because this one is really interesting when it comes to kind of that personalization factor. So Chase Bank, obviously a global banking industry, a lot of times when we talk to our financial peers within the industry space, they can have a hard time creating trust and authenticity with their overall marketplace. Nobody trusts the bank. They just don't. That's just how the world works. It's like the IRS or telecommunications. We just, as a consumer base, that can be a really hard industry to write for because you are trying to create that trust.
Mhm.
So they actually partnered with Persado, which is an AI company that is a creative writing AI company. And Chase actually measured that in a surprising turn of events, that helped Chase's copywriting come across more human.
Wow.
Isn't that funny?
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, so they leverage this technology to kind of buck the trend of not being able to sound authentic or approachable to their consumers, thus creating more trust and measuring within their insights not only greater engagement, but coming across more as an authentic brand. So definitely really interesting there.
Yeah, that is amazing. And you said it was across their articles?
Yeah, so it was across a lot of their different content and mostly a lot of social media, just because
Sure.
social media is the ultimate authenticity platform, right?
Right.
You have a direct connection with your users, and there's no way to not be able to engage with them, respond to them. They also, scale a bit younger on the side, especially in the more of the younger millennial Gen Z generation that is coming into more of the banking sphere as they age into it. But being able to create that more genuine connection with customers, they were never ever really able to do before.
Right. Wow, that's an eye opener actually, because I'm over here using it and I'm like, what is even happening? This makes no sense. But to hear to hear that these brands are having such success
I
with it,
know.
comparing the kind of before and after results of when they implemented this technology, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the other ones is Dell. So Dell, obviously a huge technology titan within the industry. It always is its brand approach is to provide that tailor experience that brought more business to the company. So if you think about, being in device sales, being in cloud hosting, being in all of these different areas, you have a huge variety of customers that you need to be able to interact with. So they actually spent their time for years. Their strategy was they did handwritten, customized emails to each customer their marketing team would do to create that authenticity. They thought that was so valuable that they actually spent the time and resources to do that. But after pairing with an AI approach, the AI tool actually was able to help Dell not only separate their large customer base, but create a clear, defined strategy on product interests that increased overall email click through rates and improved their overall conversion rate. So purchasing their products, ROI, right? So that's a way in which they used the data to actually organize and do that efficiency, not that chore, right? Based handwritten marketing for the longest time. So
Yeah. That's amazing. And you know what? I keep going back to this, but I think it's so important because a lot of people are, again, I say hesitant because, for example, the people who were writing those emails initially, I doubt that they were all laid off as a result of this technology.
oh
And
yeah,
instead, they're the ones that are guiding the tool. And they are
yeah,
the ones that are determining, does this go with our brand? Is that what this AI solution is generating aligned with our values and what we have been doing? Is it up to the right standards? For example, just taking that more managerial strategic approach, getting out of the actual email and typing the email, but rather approving the email, or steering the email in the right direction, taking the analytics and using it to figure out how to cross sell, upsell, etc. So just another example of,
Yeah, such a great point when it comes to that. I mean, we don't work for Dell, but again, there would be, as a leader of a marketing team, there's so many that didn't even enter my mind. What entered my mind would be like, oh my goodness, what other things can we do now in expanding our overall approach with the use of these great minds that obviously have brand voice involved in their skill set. There's so much more that they could be spending their time doing. So I think that that's an excellent point and very well put. um, and the last case study I wanted to share with you today is actually from the American Marketing Association. So we think about their business model. They have members. Their goal is to provide new marketing trends in different industries, branding, careers, that type of thing. So it actually partnered with Raza.io, and hopefully I'm not butchering that. And this tool actually generates smart newsletters. So say we're both members of the marketing association, we would actually get 2 different newsletters depending on what our data points or profile has told them through AI what we're interested in. So say you're super interested in creative writing, blog writing, and I'm more interested in Google Analytics. Our AI generated newsletters are going to look completely different. So they actually provided this relevant information, boosting memberships and further establishing as a leader to drive traffic to the site. So really an interesting opportunity there to personalize the connection or the content selection for each member.
wow. And that's what's so important when it comes to digital marketing, is meeting your audience where they are with what they're interested in. And oftentimes that takes a lot of time to do as a marketing professional, and analyzing the data, but then also, making sure you do it consistently. So having a tool that just tells you what to do, what to write, what to send to which person, that just is such a time saver and a money saver in the long term.
Absolutely. So, I mean, some great case studies and how AI is being utilized. And what I love about this and my passion about marketing is leveraging that technology for creativity. I mean, to me, this is art. Taking a technology that is so complex and making it so that you can meet your consumers in a place that not only they feel the most comfortable in, but also creating the most relevant, authentic, connection-based content that you possibly can to support your overall enterprise goals. I think it's just, a really crazy creative way to make sure that you're able to meet that demand.
Right. Right. I think that this whole emergence of artificial intelligence in the marketing sector is going to drive even more creative strategy. It's kind of ironic when you think about it, because it's taking over what we view as our creativity today. But as it happens, it's going to push us to kind of level up in how we're thinking and in what we're thinking, because we'll have more time and ability and data to do so. So I don't know. I again welcome all of this, the changes happening across the digital marketing landscape, because I think ultimately it's going to just improve efforts, improve efficiencies, and targeting. I mean, the amount of data that you get in order to know your audience and be able to, one, speak their language, but two, show them things that actually are relevant and interest them in a more timely and efficient manner. I think that's going to revolutionize how a lot of companies market their products and services.
Absolutely. Well, great conversation today. Thank you for joining me and taking us through this kind of new, exciting frontier when it comes to content management. I will say that we still, as humans, very value the input of our audience. So even if you are watching this on replay, please feel free to drop in the comments any content that you'd like to see from Parisa, myself, our team. We always want to make sure that we're making it as relevant as absolutely possible. Also, be sure to tune into our live streams every Tuesday morning with Eric, and then on Thursdays with myself. usually wrap these up into our podcast. We have our ground control podcast that premieres every Wednesday, and then also our digital stratosphere podcast that's every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, with original content every Wednesday. So please subscribe to those to ensure that you're getting some of these great insights from our partners. Next week on my live stream, we will actually have an industrial psychologist come to talk to us about the human side of being in a hard science type of industry such as manufacturing. So very excited to learn from her. She's also going to talk a little bit about employee burnout. So definitely a great session to join. If you do have any questions for Parisa or myself on this, please feel free to reach out to us. It's just our first name dot last name, which you can see here at thirdstage-consulting.com. We'd always love to hear from our audience. But thank you so much, Parisa, for joining us today. It was so great to have you and learn from you. And we will see you, audience, next time.
Thank you. See you next time.